13. For those that are here for Appeal 2892, we're going to put that second, and we're going to do the Appeal 2895 first. Applicant Hydrocephalus Equality Advocacy Research United Society and its successors in interest, property located at 819 Glenbrook Avenue. Variances are requested from the parking and loading requirements of Section 280-49F, 28103, and 28104 of the Zoning Code for uses that are permitted by right. To the extent that a special exception or variances are required from the conversion provisions of Section 20845, or variances are required from the dimensional requirements of Section 28048 and special regulations of Section 280-49, such approvals and relief are respectfully requested. What does hydrocephalus mean?
I will surely have the Executive Director explain all that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Board, Michael Fury, attorney from Audubon, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. My pleasure to be here this evening representing Hear Us. It's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. The Executive Director, Mary Beth Godleski, is here and will explain the mission of the nonprofit. The property before you this evening is 819 Glenbrook. It's a semi-detached commercial building, currently a shoe repair shop. Portion of the building will be dedicated to offices and meeting spaces for the nonprofit, and the rest of the building will be dedicated to retail space. Mary Beth's husband, Joe, is here. He's a talented builder who will be performing the interior renovations in the building. Will also manage the thrift, antique, collectibles, retail store plan for the building. Property is located in the C1 Commercial District. I wanted to thank the zoning officer and who's gracious in his time to discuss the application with me over the phone a couple of times and once in person. And I believe, and I'll surely defer to the zoning officer and the zoning hearing board, but I believe it's established that a combination of these two uses, office and retail, are permitted uses in the C1 Commercial District under 28047A and 28047E. As a result, I think the relief is fairly limited. I have exhibit packets for the board, if I may hand those up at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. Thank you.
We probably ought to, looking at your packet briefly, Mr. Fury, you may want to go put, label them as exhibits at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ryan. Yes, I have them labeled, numbered as 1 through 10, so perhaps they can be marked as such.
Yeah, just A1, A2, A3,
yes.
A4.
Yes, right up through A10.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that there's a typographical error in the announcement. It said 208. That should be section 28045, not 208.
Thank you. Under tab 1 is the application and the narrative which describes the relief requested. I believe that the relief noted in the last sentence is more belts and suspenders. If the two uses are permitted and the building can be internally renovated for and used for the purposes as suggested by right, which I believe they are, and the only real issue is the lack of parking and loading space on the lot itself. I think the rest can be recognized as existing non-conforming conditions.
Now you're going to, there's existing residential and that's going to be eliminated?
That's correct, Mr. Ryan.
So you're reducing a use nonconformity as part of this package?
Yeah, we're taking the residence and shoe shop use, and that will become office and retail.
So the non-conforming use will be eliminated and it will be conforming as to use. It's simply parking and loading.
That's correct, Mr. Ryan. Thank you for pointing that out, sir.
Okay. Have you calculated what the parking would be based on the square footage for the residence and the shoe shop versus your thrift store and offices?
Yes, I believe we have rough calculations. Obviously, we don't own the building, so Mr. Godleski was able to gain access and perform some rough calculations. We put together a rough sketch, which is shown as tab 10. And I'll have Mr. Godleski surely verify this. But from what I understand and from what you can see from some of the exhibits, and perhaps I'll go through that. As I said, one is the narrative and application. Under tab 2 and 3, to establish our standing as a redacted copy of the agreement of sale and the deed. Under 2, tab 2, the agreement of sale, paragraph 6B contains a specific authorization from the legal owner of the property to...
Excuse me, I have a question about that. Do you know what the date of this agreement of sale is? It's undated, because there's a time limit here. And we need to make sure that this authority hasn't lapsed.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The agreement was signed, I can check that. Hang on just one second. I have the signature date here.
I believe the first Friday in June.
That's correct. She signed it June 7th.
So
and
or
the
during
other
your
side-
testimony, you'll testify that,
Yeah.
that it's within the 180 days.
Oh, clearly within. We applied within days of the signing of the
Just
application.
want to make sure we don't have a technical hole here.
We're okay. Thank you, Mr. Cutler. Appreciate that. Yeah, we signed right at the beginning of June. Going on then, tab 4 is the zoning map, tab 5 and 6 are the tax map and tax assessment info. And so as you can see, it appears that the lot as shown on tab 7, which is an aerial photo, you'll see that the building takes up most of the lot, so there's actually no room for any parking or loading. But tab 8 shows an old map provided to us by the realtor showing that as of 1940, which I believe is prior to the enactment of the C1 zoning of the Radnor Township, the lot existed as a separate lot. And you'll see basically there's the dimensions there. And so the lot is approximately 2,500 square feet. Joe measured the building, the interior measurements are approximately 2,000 square feet. And there'd be 2 floors of usable retail office space, and there's a basement for storage.
So it's 2,000 square feet total for the retail and the office?
Yeah, we understand it not to be more than that. It might be less. Based on the calculations he has in 10, which are rough, it doesn't even add up to the 2,000 square feet. But just in case, we're indicating that it's approximately 2,000 square feet. Here's what we figured out as far as the parking, to get to your question, Mr. Ryan. The shoe shop right now measures a portion of the first floor of the building. If you refer to tab 10, you'll see first floor existing. The shoe shop goes back to, I think, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the 59 and a half, you take off the 12 feet, which is part of the living space, and the kitchen, you're left with about 40 feet by 17 feet. So the most the shop is, in addition to some type of storage in the basement, is approximately 680 square feet. Okay. So that would be, with the 200 square feet per parking space, that would be requiring 4 spaces. Obviously, there's no on-site parking right now.
Yeah.
And a residence would require 2, as we understand it.
So there's one residence, and so that's a total of 6 under
Right.
existing.
Well, for retail, there would also have to be 1 additional space for each 2 employees. It's not just a square footage
Oh,
calculation.
very well then, okay.
Yep.
I don't know how many the shoe shop had, how many employees.
Right.
Probably not more than 2.
Yeah, I'm unaware. Do you know
Probably more
how
than
many,
one.
how many employees the shoe
I
shop
think-
has?
What we're trying to get at is, we're trying to figure out if we're increasing or decreasing nonconformities of
Yeah.
use. And there's multiple changes here.
Right.
Part with the parking, part with the introduction of office space. So this is why we're asking all these
Right.
questions.
Yeah, I think clearly we're asking for a variance because I think the parking requirements would be more as a result of the proposed use. Because if we have a building approximately 2,000 square feet, we need about 10 spaces. And Mr. Cutler, as you indicated, there'd be the additional requirement for employees. So the variance would be larger. I think you would need more parking for the proposed use than you do for the existing uses. Clearly, that's the reason why we asked for the variance.
Well, how big is the new office going to be?
Okay, I'm going to have Mr.
Okay.
Godleski go ahead and testify to all that, if that's okay?
Yeah, well, here, just where what I'm trying to understand, you have a non-conforming building that has no parking at all.
Yes,
My understanding of the law is that there is some protection accorded from parking requirements for buildings that have no parking at all.
right.
But, yeah, I think it does. The question, however, is that if you give you a hypothetical. You have a 2,000 square foot building, and it has no parking, and it's lawfully non-conforming. There are various uses of that 2,000 square feet that could range from a total of 8 spaces to 30 spaces, okay? My read of the law is that you have to get some protection to give you a reasonable use, but you're not necessarily entitled to the 30. You probably have to have something more reasonable. And if there's not that much of a change here on parking, that's relevant to the decision that the board has to make as to whether this is within reason and within the protection or outside of reason, or at least as a component
Yes.
of what the board has to decide.
So if he has no off-street parking, if he has no off-street parking, like we have in downtown Wayne,
Yeah.
okay, then he really is determined by the off-street parking. Isn't that?
Well, no,
isn't
because
it-
we're not in the Wayne business overlay.
Okay, so is that only in the overlay district?
That's
It's not
only
in
the
the, okay.
overlay district.
That's what I wasn't sure if it was just in the overlay district.
Yeah, it's just in the event.
But he has off-street parking public metered across the street? Is that what that
Yes,
picture
we
that
do,
I saw?
and I'm
Yeah,
glad
but
to
that
review
provision is, that just applies to the business overlay district. In other words,
No, no, I mean here,
You're
across the street from
encouraged to
him.
use metered parking on the street where it's available and
Right.
not have off-street parking in the overlay district. That whole provision has no relevance to anything else in the township.
Yeah, but
for
what
whatever reason.
I guess what I'm saying, Noah, is the fact that if he has no place to park, in other words, if the property has no parking at all, what do you do in those instances?
I think what John's getting at is this. Let's say they're non-conforming because, I'm just going to pull numbers out of my hat, just to explain it. Let's say they're non-conforming because the existing uses, residence and shoe shop, would require 5 spaces and they have none.
Right.
And would require a loading space and they have none. But it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, so that's lawful and it's lawful to maintain it. Now, let's say the new mix of uses with office and retail are going to require 10 spaces. That may be an increase in the level of nonconformity. Now, they're decreasing the nonconformity to
Yes.
the extent that they're getting rid of a residence
Right.
and putting in offices, which is a permitted use of right in the district. So it's a matter of seeing to what extent are they increasing the one nonconformity, if at all, and reducing the other one, and then weighing it to
What
come
the
out
net
with some
is.
reasonable conclusion. So we just have to put figures on these things.
And I would add to that my read of the cases is that it's a reasonable insulation from the parking. For example, going from 5 to 6 might still be a reasonable protection when you have no parking at all. But going from 5 to 25 might be unreasonable. I don't think you get a total shield from the parking. You get enough of a shield, a nonconformance protection, to allow a reasonable use of the property. Here's, Noah, you point out, there is an additional factor in that, you know, the parking is a dimensional requirement, and we have a dimensional nonconformity. We also have a use nonconformity, which they're getting rid of. So to me, that's an equity in their favor.
Thank you very much. If I may continue then, just following up on the board's discussion, I appreciate that. I think it's a classic hardship situation qualifying us for relief from the parking and loading requirements. We have a property proposed now to be used as zoned by right, which is not of sufficient size to have any on-site parking, and obviously this condition has existed for many, many years. And just to use the property as zoned, the variances are required. We feel that this is not going to adversely affect the surrounding properties or the character of the neighborhood. As the board pointed out, a number of the commercial properties in the area would not have room for on-site parking and utilizes the street parking, which is available right outside on the street outside the building. And what makes this what we believe to be the minimum variance to afford relief and perhaps reduce the variance in this case to a de minimis variance is that there's a public parking lot directly across the street from this property, as you can see on the aerial and in the pictures under tab 9. That's adjacent to the train parking lot. So anyone coming to the offices of Hear Us or visiting the proposed store can park at the meters on the street right outside. And if those spaces are taken by the folks visiting Bryn Mawr Hospital's thrift shop right next door, then the meter parking is available in the public parking lot across the street. Tab 9 pictures were taken on Friday, June 7th, between approximately 4 and 5, and I'll have the clients review the photos with the board.
Okay, I guess just to, cover the ground, Noah pointed out that for your 680 feet, you need 4 spaces plus at least 1 for the employees. That's 5 plus 2 for the residences. So what's there now is 7. Are we going to get testimony that lets us calculate the number
Yes.
you need for the proposed use? Because we're starting at 7.
I think 10. I think we use 10.
You need 10?
I'm figuring if tab 10 is right, and I think the ordinance says 1 for every 200 square feet on the first floor, and 1 for every 300 square feet on the second floor, and 1 for each employee, so 1 for each 2 employees.
That's for retail.
Charlie, this tab 10 doesn't tell us how big the office is or the new retail use. We need to put figures on those 2 uses in order to do the math.
Well, what's going to be on the first floor?
Yeah, should I call the
Yeah, let's-
witnesses now? Okay.
Yeah, we
Would you
need
like
facts.
to? I was going to have Mary Beth explain the mission of the.
Okay, just let's find out how much the square footage is.
Okay. All right. Perhaps Joe could.
We can get back to the mission.
Joe, can you move forward, please?
Board members, just for a point of clarification, that the parking is based off of not the gross floor area, but 80% of the gross floor area. So when
Okay.
you're doing your calculations, it's 80%.
That's what I thought, it's 80% of the gross
Yes.
score, right?
Correct.
Okay, then we.
It doesn't make any difference, right?
Yeah, it does. We get, for 680 square feet, it's 80%.
Right.
They lose it, they're down to,
Yep.
they
I-
don't need an extra space there.
Yeah,
So, would you like to swear?
so it would be
Sir, can you
4,
raise your right hand? I'll swear you in.
4 and 2.
I'm going to swear you in. If you raise your
6
right
feet,
hand.
8.
You do solemnly
You can
swear
eat 8.
or affirm this testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And state your full name for the record, please,
Joseph Gillespie,
and spell your last name.
Godlewski.
Joe, looking at the first floor exterior, could you explain to the board, does the shop, where does it go in relation to the first floor? Does it just go to the steps, or does it go to this first line here?
From what I know he's using, it is still operating, it goes to the back of the steps.
Oh, okay. So that's actually less than what we had originally said. So it goes to, it's this, basically, it would be 50, excuse me just a second, I'm sorry.
If you're, probably want to put that on the screen so people can see what you're pointing to. Or is that, are you using this, or are you just asking?
Joe, could you bring up number 10 while I'm doing a little calculation here? Okay, so Joe, if you take out then, this is 11 feet approximately here, right along here?
No, 11 feet is from here to here. This is approximately
So what's the
17
distance?
feet.
So what's the distance between, so what are we taking off of this 11 feet to get the, where the actual?
11 feet is this way here, from
Yes.
here to here,
And how far is this? If you take this line straight across here, what is that measurement? Right?
3 feet.
About 3 feet? Okay. And you say the building is approximately 17 feet wide, is that correct?
Yes.
So that's 544 for the existing shop? So that'd be 3. Yeah, I was mistaken earlier. I thought this 11-foot area was also shop. That's what I was calculating. So it's really 3.
Is existing
Existing shop would be 3 spaces.
with the residents, is that, it's
The residence
3?
is 2, and then however employees, I think Mr. gentleman works there by himself. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yes.
So it's just one.
The current requirement is 6. 3 plus 2 plus 1.
Yes, sir.
And what are you removing? On Exhibit 10, it says 1,013 square feet, but you're reducing that to 680, and is that correct?
No, I apologize. The 680 was a calculation of what I thought the shop was, but I was mistaken in that the shop does not include what goes beyond the steps here. And so that 680 calculation was in error. We just
So
revised that.
1,013 is the square footage.
So
of that.
1,013 is the total now inside square footage of the first floor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but you see, sir, the back part beyond the steps, that's all residence, and then the second floor is all residence, right?
Yes.
But you're getting rid of that?
Yes,
Okay, so the
Just-
first floor is, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, the first floor is 1013, and it's 80% of that 1013 that we calculate on, right?
No,
Correct.
it's that portion of the first floor that was used for retail.
Yeah, but we're
You take
calculating, yeah,
80%
what we're
of that.
calculating now is what he needs now, what he's, for his new thing. I'm trying to calculate.
But he's trying to tell you that he was wrong in telling you the square footage to start with of the existing use.
yes, yeah, I
He's just trying to
apologize.
correct our starting point.
Okay.
Is what he's doing now. So what's the new starting point? It's not 680 square feet anymore, it's something else, right?
Yes, I think it's 544 if I have the calculations
Is
correct.
that based
now.
upon 80% or just based upon the dimensions?
Well, 544 is 80% of 680.
But no, what I'm saying is this, what we have really is 26 plus 3 times 17. So we have 595 square feet for, from what we understand, for the shop.
And then we apply 20%
What are
to,
you eliminating from the 1,013?
The residence area in the back, which is,
Kitchen and the steps?
yeah, and Joe, when you measure 26 feet, that goes, does that not include the door?
No, it doesn't. It goes to here.
No. How big is the door?
Approximately 36 inches.
What I did was, in order to do the calculations, I took 59 and a half, and I'm subtracting out the kitchen, which is 7.6. Then I'm subtracting out the 12 feet, which is a living area. And then I'm subtracting out 8 of the 11 feet that Joe said is still part of the residence. And so I'm coming up with 31.9, multiplying that by 17. I'm coming up, I apologize, 542. 542.
and then you have to multiply that by 0.8.
Okay. $433.
Okay, so it's still 3 spaces.
So from the stairs back, currently and continually will be, no, currently is residence.
Yes,
What
and
will that,
upstairs.
what will that back area be used for going forward? under
That's your shop,
proposed
right? It's
plan?
gonna
That will be for the new store, the
Retail,
new shop.
part of the retail.
Up to the kitchen. The kitchen will not include the new store.
So that's 1,013 square feet?
No, that comes to
Well, let's deal with the one,
the new plan.
1,013.
The 1,013 is existing first floor square footage.
Okay,
That
That's
includes the kitchen.
total, everything.
right, and that's what the new retail space will cover?
No,
The new retail space is third page in on 10. Want to review that with them?
will be everything with the exception of the kitchen, the whole back end where the kitchen is will not, the kitchen will not be included with the store.
And
That
how
will
many
just,
square feet of retail will that be?
it comes to 884 for the new store use.
And that's the
That's
52
total.
times 17.
Before you multiply it by 0.8, right?
Yeah.
So let's multiply that by 0.8 and see what we get.
That's 707.
So what's the kitchen going to be?
707, no.
The kitchen won't be needed for the store. It'll be there just as maybe an employee to
So
go
it
into,
really is part of the store.
not for customer use,
No,
just,
but it's still part of the, it's still part of
it'll
the.
be in the building,
Yeah, it's
yes,
still
but
part
it
of
won't be
retail.
for
So you
no
gotta count the
customer.
whole
It'll be
13.
blocked off for
The whole
customer use.
10,031. It's like, you know, it's still part of the facility, the retail facility in my eyes.
Or it may be part of the office. It could be that it's part of the office, like an employee kitchen. I mean, we don't
But
really
it's
know.
on the first floor.
Where will the office be? Upstairs?
Yes.
Is the whole upstairs will be office?
No,
What they're asking for you, Joe, is to indicate what will be office and what, if any, retail will be on the second floor, because they would like to have the calculation on the parking.
approximately 500 square feet of the second floor will be office, which would be the, I think we have at the front half of the building.
What on the second floor?
It's
what on
the
second
same
floor
thing,
will-
Kate.
What on the second floor
No,
will not be office?
Yeah, but the office and retail is the same thing. It's 200 square feet of floor area.
No,
No, it's that-
there's an additional requirement based on employees that applies to the retail, I think, but not to the office. And the formula change, well, it doesn't come into effect here because you're not over 50,000 square feet, so the formula
Yeah, it
won't
does,
change.
yeah.
Well, also, the one space per 200 goes to one space per 300 for retail on the second floor.
Yep. It's retail is one space for 200 on the first floor. On the second floor, it's one space for 300. And for retail, it's one space for every 2 employees.
Right.
Right, so- and, yeah, and it doesn't really, in offices, they don't really have employees. It's really one space for every 200 square feet. So, I mean, it's really going to come down to 8 spaces. I think no matter how you cut it, it's going to wind up at 8 spaces.
Joe, do you anticipate, how many employees do you anticipate being at the store?
2.
2.
Yeah, that's kind of what I said, 2 employees.
So we're really talking about a rise from
5,
six-
from 5, really, it's 5, right?
No, I thought it was 3 plus 2 plus 1
That's the
under.
way I understood it, because
Yeah.
the 1 would be for employees, 3 for the shop, and then 2 for residents.
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're putting a use that requires 8 in place of one that requires 6, but you're also getting rid of a non-conforming
Right.
use in exchange for the dimensional relief.
16, yeah.
A lot across the street with the meters, this is a public lot, not a Septa lot, right?
There is a public lot and a septic lot.
And a septic lot,
Is that-
but there is a
what-
public
Yeah,
lot.
if you look at 10, Joe, could you review 10, 9, tab 9, the photographs? First of all, the first photograph is just, that's the shop on the right? That's Mr. Arenada's shop?
Yes,
Okay. And then this is going down the street to the left, is that correct?
yes,
All right. The third picture is all the way down the street to the left, is that correct?
yes,
All right. Now we're going up the street the other way. That's the Bryn Mawr thrift shop to the right
Yes.
adjacent?
yes,
Okay, and then that's, the next picture is going up the street. That's Bryn Mawr Hospital across the street, right, the next page?
yes.
All right, now this is the parking lot. This is the Septa parking lot, is that correct?
No, this is the public parking lot.
Okay, and then you have.
This is the public parking
public
lot.
parking,
And
then
this
you
is
have
the
a-
Septa parking
Oh, this
lot.
is the Septa parking lot.
Yes.
Okay. And these pictures were taken approximately between 4 and 5 on Friday?
Yep,
So the public parking area is shown in the, let me just- the 8th picture and also the 10th picture. Is that correct? Pointing that way.
yes, that's the public parking lot.
The 8th picture and the 10th picture is the public parking area across the street.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just, for what is worth, I would comment that we needed to go through the parking calculations, but it looks like we're dealing with a couple of extra spaces at the most for the new use, and we're getting rid of the non-conforming use. I think, that on the basis of what we've heard, the board, if it wished to, could reasonably conclude that this is, within the nonconformity, given the other thing they're doing, which is getting rid of the nonconforming residential use.
I tend to agree to that. No, you have anything you want to ask?
No, I think the uses they're going to make are allowed of right. They're not non-conforming uses, and you have this non-conforming dimensional issue, but I think that's ameliorated by the presence of the existing public parking in abundance. And that's generally not that parked up, as I recall, that area along
Those
Glenville
pictures
Road.
between 4 and 5 on a Friday.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, I think they don't need a variance to make these changes in use, and to the extent that they're making the changes in the parking requirement, that's ameliorated by the public parking and the fact that they're just continuing a nonconformity, really. They're increasing it, but the increase is not going to
Right.
impact adversely on the public. So I'm in favor of
I guess before we actually do, is there anybody?
just saying that
No,
there's
I'm
really
with
no
you.
approval required, that they're
Right.
entitled to do what they're going to do as a matter of right.
Okay.
I think that, to me, this is protection under nonconformance, is, you know, on the testimony we had, I think that given that they're abandoning a nonconforming use, they are within the protection of nonconformance, but often that is given through a variance. Jenkintown towing it was a variance, it was a grant of a variance that was upheld, but it was based on nonconformance. It's a little odd because normally variances are based on your traditional hardship, minimum relief, negative impact. But here there's a nonconformity, and the shape that that approval takes is, you know, commonly a variance. I think this board has to make the decision. I don't think it could have been given over the counter.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
I think the chairman wanted to just hear a minute or two about the,
As long as it's a minute or two, yes.
please. Mary Beth, could you come forward
Real
and be sworn?
quickly, not to rush you, but
Yes, that's
we
fine.
have
That's quite all right.
maybe a contentious thing after you.
I, Emmanuel, raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Can you state your name for the record?
Mary Beth Gillespie,
And spell.
Godlewski.
Mary Beth, in just a minute explanation, could you explain to the chair and the board your involvement in HEROS and why you're committed to this mission?
17 years ago, I gave birth to a child who was born with a brain condition. I was told that she would have one surgery and she would be fine, and 35 surgeries later, she isn't. So about when she was maybe 5, I began getting involved with volunteer work with different organizations that help this type of condition. One of the conditions that she got was hydrocephalus, which she got from a mistake that was made during a surgery. And what hydrocephalus is we all have fluid on our brain. It's cerebral spinal fluid. It starts as cerebral fluid, becomes cerebral spinal, and then becomes spinal fluid. Hydrocephalus is a condition when, for whatever reason, whether it's a blockage, overproduction, lack of drainage, the fluid becomes stuck in your head. And years ago, you may recall children with really large heads, and up until the 1960s, most of these children died. It is a condition that can be congenital. My daughter's was not. It was caused by a mistake where they blocked something in the back of her head where the fluid drains. It's also one of the leading causes of dementia in people over 50. However, there's a huge lack of awareness. So it's a condition that affects all races, ages, economic status, and our mission is to bring awareness to this condition as well as other brain conditions. We have an enormous amount of military coming back from the wars that have acquired TBIs that now we're dealing with the side effect of it, which is hydrocephalus.
And you provide education and support as well. One of the things you'll be doing at the offices, you'll have maybe once or twice a month support groups meeting and whatnot.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you very much. Are you all done?
I am, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You please accept my exhibits, and if we require any further information, we'll be here.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience have anything, comments? All right, now Noah.
Well, John, how would you advise us to phrase this from the standpoint of what relief we should grant? And then I'll make the motion.
I would, assuming you wish to grant the application, I would make it an order that said variance relief is granted it being established that the property's parking is non-conforming as to parking, that the change is within appropriately within the protection of the nonconformance, particularly in view of the fact that the property will be brought into compliance with the uses in this district and that the residential use will be abandoned.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the application on the grounds as stated by our solicitor.
Well phrased.
Boy, it's nice to have you back, Noah. Pete?
Oh, this time I seem to have passed the buck on the technicalities.
I concur.
As well. Thank you very much.
Members of the board, thank you for your time.
And good luck
this
for
evening.
with your organization.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay. Appeal 2892, continued from the June 20th, 2013.
At this time, Mr. Chairman, I asked politely to be excused.
You may be
Since I
excused.
I do not feel I can participate in the decision of this matter because I missed prior hearings. I've been out for medical reasons, so it wouldn't be fair for me to participate.
And where is George?
Did you hear that sign?
Do you want me to go out?
Go get him, tell him to come in.
You want me to go round them up?
Yeah, I think he's doing that.
Okay.
These grandmothers had an operation. My grandmother had 2 or 3 months earlier. They went to the same surgery.
We'll have to read all this stuff, too. I don't have to read that, Liz, do I?
I'm sorry?
I don't have to read that from George. It's a 7-page letter.
No, I don't think.
I'm going to read the,
Yeah, read the address.
yeah.
And
I'm gonna read
the
what's
other.
there. The memo from the planning commission. Okay, well, while you're getting ready, George, I'm going to read your thing for the 13th time. Appeal 2892, continued from the June 20th, 2013. Applicant, 115 Stratford Avenue, LLC, property located at 115 Stratford Avenue in split zone CO and R4. The applicant is amending its application to seek zoning hearing board approvals required to redevelop the subject property by demolishing the existing structure and constructing a total of 11 dwelling units within a unified group of multi-townhouses buildings to be located on one lot and seeking the following relief. A variance from Code 28092A4 to allow density modification development on a tract of less than 5 acres. 2, a variance of Code 20842 to allow residential use and related improvements in the CO Commercial Office District. 3, variances from Code 28091G to allow I, paved vehicle turnaround areas, and 2I, a 6-foot-high wall or fence in the required buffer area from the adjoining bank property, a portion of which is zoned residential. 4, to the extent required, variances from Code 28029 and Code 28093 to allow multifamily townhouse buildings on the lot. 5, to the extent required, a variance from Code 280-142B requiring plans to be forwarded to the Planning Commission. And 6, a variance from Code 280-109 to allow a 6-foot-high wall in the front yard setback. 7, any other reliefs necessary to allow the proposed redevelopment of the property. I also have a memo from Susan Stern, Planning Commission Chair, in absence of the Chair and Vice Chair, dated July 15, 2013, reference 115 Stratford Avenue. Dear Mr. Ryan, at the July 15, 2013 special meeting of the Planning Commission, a 4-to-1 vote was taken in favor of the following motion. The Planning Commission supports the redevelopment of the site without saving the existing structure and supports the density modification variance. However, the Planning Commission would like to see a reduction in the number of units built and an increase in guest parking provided. The Planning Commission is also in support of variances requests 2, 3, 4, 6 as the plan stated on the plan. Sincerely, Susan Stern. For those, this is merely a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Doesn't necessarily dictate what the zoning board ultimately decides. George?
Good evening, members of the board. George Brosman, representing the applicant. As the board knows, we've been here on 2 prior occasions. We were here last June when we had announced to the board that we had reached an agreement with the neighbors who are represented by Mr. Crawford. And we had read into the record certain conditions that we had agreed to, and we decided after consulting with the board that we should get a revised plan that would incorporate those conditions. So the hearing was continued again for that purpose. So we did submit, I submitted a revised letter along with a revised plan, which is the subject of the hearing tonight. What we're going to do, just to give you a highlight, I was going to call Bo Erickson back to the stand. to officially put in the record the conditions that we had agreed to with the neighbors. That'll be coupled with a request that if the board were inclined to approve our request, that the board would consider making those conditions of approval. And I was going to walk Mr. Erickson briefly through the changes in the plan and the relief we need at this time. With that introduction, if there are no questions, I could proceed.
Do you also know the township is here as well?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. John Rice, on behalf of the town. Township's not taking a position for or against this application. Ultimately, there's a conditional use and a land development plan that's coming in front of the board, assuming there's any relief. So we're not taking a position at this point.
Thank you.
But I'm staying anyway.
It's a good thing. I was looking forward to this all day since I heard you were going to be here.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
No, you're here, so that's, okay.
Mr. Roseman, just as a clarification, the proceedings before the commissioners will also require the conditional use approval for the density modification. We're just saying that the variance being requested is to allow you to proceed without approval on the basis of less acreage than you normally would need. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we would require land development approval also.
Yeah, so there's, those steps are for another day.
Right. I have an exhibit package that I would like to hand out. I'll give a copy to Mr. Rice.
Thank you.
Let me tell you what I've done with this exhibit package. On the cover of it is a list of all of the exhibits that we have. We've previously introduced A1 through A11. There's a line drawn here on the first page to show that we're starting at A12. So this package that I've handed you has a list of all of the exhibits, but it contains only copies of the ones we're going to do tonight, A12 through A16. I do have extra copies of the earlier exhibits if anybody didn't save theirs. A1 through A11. I have those with me if needed.
What is the difference, if any, between the large plan that was submitted with the application and your revised compromise site plan A14? Is there any difference between these two?
No.
So this is authentic.
Yeah, I just put it in here for convenience as we go through it. One variance that I think was listed on our plan that we can withdraw is variance number 5. We didn't know if we were going to get a meeting of the Planning Commission. When we were here last, they accommodated us with a special meeting that was held on Monday. Mr. Falcone read the recommendation into the record, so I'm withdrawing the request for the variance number 5 is listed on the plan because we did go to the Planning Commission. They reviewed the plan and recommended that the variances be approved.
And you're proceeding on the basis of the A14 plan tonight? In
Correct.
Which the house will be demolished?
Correct. If I could have Mr. Erickson, I don't know if we should re-swear him or he was sworn before.
I think you've been sworn before. You're still under oath.
If you could just restate your name for me, please.
Bo Erickson,
And spell.
E-R-I-X-X-O-N.
Where should Mr. Erickson stand for the TV coverage?
Where you are.
Okay,
Where you are.
let's share the space here. Mr. Erickson, I've given you a package of our exhibits that I've handed up to the board. I want to refer you first to Exhibit A12. Are you familiar with that exhibit?
Yes, I am.
Is A12 a list of the conditions that you've agreed to with the neighbors?
Yes, they are.
And if the board is so inclined to approve the relief, are you requesting that they would incorporate these conditions into any approval?
Yes, I am.
And for the record, A13 is a letter that I sent to the board dated June 26, 2013. That was essentially amending our application, submitting in the revised plan. So I'm going to skip over that, but I'd like that to be included in the record. Now, moving to Exhibit A14.
Before we leave A12, condition number 5, developers shall provide stormwater management for the site in excess of requirements. I'm not quite sure I understand what that means.
We've tried to be very vague about that. We have to go to land development approval where those plans will be prepared. At this time, we were just agreeing with the neighbors to do more than what would be required by the code without specifying what we would do or how much more we would do. We were basically committing to do something more, but we were going to work out the details at land development. Did that answer your question, Mr. Ryan?
If Mr. Crawford agrees with that, then, I mean, that's the negotiated language is. I mean, the question would be whether we would want to add that into the satisfaction of the township engineer.
I don't think they're going to get, the township engineer is going to put exactly, no less than what is required by the township, and I can talk to that firsthand. I mean, he's pretty good as to exactly what the stormwater management is necessary. I don't, as far as excess requirements, I mean, it's vague, but I mean, how would you make that a number? I don't know how you define it. 5% more, 10% more, 3% more. I mean, as long as he meets the requirements, as long as he meets what the township requires him to do there, I think that's all we can really say, I think. Can we require him to do more?
I think that, I guess what my view is exactly what you're saying. The township engineer is going to tell them what they're going to do.
Yep, what they have to do.
And that's the practical matter, and the township engineer will do what he, in his professional engineering opinion, feels is necessary. So I guess, if all parties are there, you can put the conditions in, but I'm not sure what that means, as a practical matter, what this really adds.
But it is something we've agreed to between us and the neighbors.
I'd like you to focus on Exhibit A14. Is this the revised plan that incorporates the conditions that we've just spoken about?
Yes, it is.
And can you tell the board briefly what the differences, the major differences are between this plan and the original plan that was before the board at Exhibit A1F?
Well, this plan has changed in the fact that we are providing more open space at the rear of the property. We've taken the carriage homes and shifted them farther forward towards Stratford Avenue. It allows for a large area of green space here, and then situated the carriage homes, as I said, closer to Stratford Avenue.
When you said green space here, you meant, describe that, is that the eastern?
This is the eastern side of our property, adjacent to the neighborhood, and we are providing 120 feet of space from the rear property line to our foundation walls at the furthest, or units furthest back from Stratford Avenue.
And did your prior plan that was before the board propose for some commercial use of the property?
Yes, we had, our original plan had carriage homes that were situated back in this area and having commercial use of the existing building.
So you have an all-residential plan now?
Yes, this is an all-residential plan.
And are you slightly reducing impervious coverage compared to what is there today?
Yes, we are. This plan has less impervious than what is currently on the site. It's a very green plan with very small building coverage and a lot of green space.
And as we discussed, you'll be required to do stormwater management as part of the land development process.
That's correct.
And is there any stormwater management on this property currently?
No, there is not.
I want to focus on open space. Under the base R4 zoning, if we don't proceed under density modification, under base R4 zoning, is there any restricted open space required?
No, there is not.
But under density modification, there is?
Yes. So with the density modification, we are forced to provide open space, and we will provide more than the minimum requirements.
And those numbers are shown on the plan?
Yes, they are.
And that's in excess of the 25 feet buffer that's required along residential zone properties?
Yeah, that's correct. The 20-foot buffer is provided, but it's not included in our calculations.
I want to focus on the key measure of relief that we're seeking, the relief from the 5-acre minimum tract area required for density modification in R4 district. You testified previously about various physical circumstances of the conditions, including chiefly the way the area surrounding the property had changed to commercial use, the split zoning, the irregular lot shape, the natural features of the site in the form of open space and trees in the rear of the property. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, under the prior plan, you were proposing to reuse the existing building. Can you explain why you're not proposing to reuse the existing building at this time?
The existing building, we have investigated it further with a structural engineer, and we have found that it is not viable to support that building moving forward. We've also, because we have negotiated an agreement with the neighbors, we are taking probably the best part of our property, leaving it as a green space, moving all our units towards the front of the property where the deteriorating building is located. So it needs to be removed for this plan to be viable.
And in the package, we had some photographs of the building in the record before, but we're supplementing that with Exhibit A15. And there are letters, A through K, I think. Can you, referring to the letters on each, briefly describe what each photograph shows?
Yes, this is the front of the building where you have the old columns where you can see that they are completely rotting out at the bases, so their structural integrity is definitely compromised.
That's photograph A.
Yep.
Now move on to B.
Photograph B is another picture of the same.
C.
Photograph C is a picture of the right side of the existing structure. One thing that is important to notice is there's a extensive water damage behind the gutter located on the far right of the building. And in this area, there's a large amount of water infiltration that has compromised the stone wall.
Now move on to D.
D is the left side of the building. As you can see again, you have, in this area, you have ivy growing on the stone, which also traps a lot of moisture, and that is also negatively impacting the structural integrity of the stone walls.
And what are you up to?
This is Exhibit
F.
E.
Oh, E.
Exhibit E is the rear of the building, where you can see the additions that have been added to it with very poor construction, and the attachment of the additions to the existing structure were not very well constructed. Therefore, they also compromise the structural integrity of the building.
What do you have with F?
F is a picture of the rear of the building, which obviously demonstrates that there's nothing there worth saving. This is an internal picture.
That's G.
Yes, this is G, and here you can see just the beams that are inside with a large amount of dry rot and deterioration. Here is another picture. This is a...
Is that H?
Yes, it is Exhibit H. Here you see some of the beams that are inside of the house with tremendous amount of rot, which is degrading the building's viability.
Now we're on I.
This is Exhibit I. This is another internal shot where you can see just the extent of the demolition that has taken place. There's nothing of any value inside of this building.
J.
J is on the third floor where you have some brick components. You can see where it's really crumbling apart, and you get holes in the roof, which is allowing water to, and has allowed water to come into this building for the last 8 years.
K.
This is towards the rear of the building where you see some of the floors have been demoed and a tremendous amount of black mold, which has spread throughout the structure.
Now, you touched on it, but are these photographs representative of the entire inside of the structure?
I believe they are, and we've had opportunity to walk the structure with both the neighbors and Commissioner Higgins yesterday, and I think we all saw that the structure is in very bad shape. It may have had some aesthetic qualities or been in a nice building many years ago, but that is not the case today.
And has the plumbing been removed, things like that?
All the plumbing's been removed, all the wiring's been removed. As I said, there are multiple holes in the ceiling. All this demolition work was done, I believe, 8 years ago, prior to my involvement with the building. And it has been in this situation for 8 years and deteriorating in every year.
Did we see any wildlife in the building when we were there?
Yes, there unfortunately are 2 turkey vultures living on the 3rd floor, making a mess.
I'd like to move on. And you have experience in the building business?
Yes, I do.
And so you feel confident in your opinions about this building?
Yes, I am. And I've worked with our structural engineers, and I'm very confident that this building is not savable.
Can you flip to Exhibit A16 in the package and tell the board what this is?
Before we go to A16, I just have one other question on A12, the deed restriction. Who's going to implement that? Who's going to approve it? I mean, it seems to me, Mr. Rice, that the township, or you should approve that. The zoning board, I mean, to whom who will have the right to enforce the restriction? The zoning board doesn't have any enforcement authority. How do you envision?
Which, are you asking about a specific condition?
Yes, condition number 7 in Exhibit 7. It has to about deed restricting a portion of the property as open space. How is that going to get done?
Well, we have a private agreement. You had actually recommended last time we were here that we get a private agreement, which we have with the neighbors.
Okay.
So they can enforce it. And I also believe that under the ordinance, the density modification does require open space. And I believe that during the conditional use and land development, typically the solicitor has to review the documents that are created to set those things up. But so I think it's two-pronged.
Not to make more work for Mr. Rice, but I think probably that you're the one who's going to have to sign off on the deed restriction and if you want the township. So I was going to suggest that we put in the deed restriction shall be subject to the approval of the township solicitor.
I mean, we would prefer to leave that until land development. We have our private agreement with the neighbors, and we'll work that out at land development.
I think land development's where that's.
Okay, but it's not going to be the zoning board that enforces this condition.
Sure.
Do we enforce anything?
No, that's the
didn't think
point.
so.
That's the point. It's in a we're making it a condition of the approval, and it's something that is an agreement with the neighbors that is really something I don't think we should be involved in, frankly.
So can we explain what Exhibit A16 is?
Yes, this is a rendering of the buildings that I propose to construct at the site, which I think will blend very nicely into the area.
So this is the exhibit that we're referring to in number 6 of A12, where it says that It would be substantially similar in architecture to the rendering provided to the neighbors and entered into the record. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, by moving the development further away from the rear property line, can you comment on whether any additional natural features will be protected?
Yes, with this plan, we are protecting many of the trees around the perimeter. We're protecting an additional row of existing pines that the neighbors had requested to remain. And obviously, the very large green space at the rear or eastern part of the property.
And I would like to draw your attention to Exhibit A9, which was in an earlier package. I'll give you here. This is a copy of the density modification provisions, particularly Section 280-90, which sets forth the intent of the ordinance. Could you quickly run through the three intents and describe quickly how we comply with that with the revised plan?
Absolutely. This plan, the first thing is to encourage conservation and use of open space with new residential developments, and this definitely does that. Has a lot of open space, and we are protecting the trees around the perimeter, and we're providing them in a way that the neighbors around us have asked. The second item is to preserve trees and topography and minimize soil erosion. These are all things that we will do. And
Item 3
is to encourage attractive arrangements of dwellings and using them effectively within the topography. And I think this layout does that both in terms of viewscapes from the side, the front of our building, and I think it will be a very attractive development in its surroundings.
And it talks about being in harmony with the surrounding tracks, and I
Yeah.
believe we've done that.
Yes, I do.
Now, I'd like to focus on some of the minor measures of relief that we've asked. I've taken, I don't think we need to put this in the record unless the board wants to, but I've taken A14 and put it, a big version of that up here, and I've highlighted certain areas. And I'd like to use the yellow highlighting on here to have you quickly identify these areas. The first measure of relief I wanted to request is, or discuss, is the request for a 6-foot-high wall in the Stratford Avenue front yard setback. Can you show where that is on A14? And have you reduced the relief requested for that wall from the last time?
Yes, we have from 8 to 6 feet.
And briefly, what's the purpose of that wall and why is it needed?
Yes, we'd like to construct this wall here because obviously we have commercial properties to the north and to the west and to the south, just for these carriage homes towards Stratford Avenue, to provide a visual buffer which will set them off and give them a little spacing from the commercial property that is in front of them.
And the second measure of relief, this is one to the extent required, I think, for the board's edification. The zoning line is split. It's marked on the plan here, R4 and C2. So to the extent that the board or the township would feel that a residential turnaround is a residential use in a commercial district, we ask for that measure of relief. So Mr. Erickson, is this residential turnaround, what land use is that next to?
This is a commercial use. This is the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which has its automotive servicing bays in the back. And I think we're not going to have a negative impact on them by having a residential turnaround
Now,
in that area.
Moving on, the ordinance for density modification requires a 25-feet buffer whenever your property abuts a residentially zoned property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we've talked before, but the property to the south, next to the car rental agency at which the property abuts, What is that land use?
This is a bank, and it's obviously a commercial use. Their traffic pattern drives around this way. They have an automated teller and a drive-up window on this side. And it is zoned commercial to the south, but a sliver of their commercial use is zoned residential.
So technically, we need relief to have a portion of the wall. We have a second, is that a second 6-foot-high screening wall?
Yes, it is.
And we have a portion of that that's technically within the buffer.
That's correct.
What's the purpose of that wall?
Well, this wall is to really buffer and provide a view shed or escape for our residents here from the commercial. And also take the traffic lights and really the impact of this commercial use and give us protection for our residential use that we abut.
So ironically, we need a buffer variance to provide a buffer for our residential from the commercial use next door.
Yes.
Is there, it's a masonry wall? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Why is it run so far deep into the property? Why would you, I know you're separating the two sets, but how come they're going to have a stone wall in their backyard?
To provide privacy for between, say, Unit 6 and then Units 4 and 5, so that it's providing privacy for those units.
Are these the only two building groups that have their accessory areas backing up to one another?
That is correct.
So is that part of the reason?
Yes, that is definitely part of the reason.
And then you also have to put you feel you have to put the wall.
Yeah, I understand the wall
Right.
to the bank. I understand that. I'm just wondering if, you're the builder. I mean, you're going to deal with the people that buy the houses.
Yes, and I think they'll appreciate
I'm not so sure. I don't know if I'd want a 6-foot stone wall in my backyard. It's just me.
Now, is there another turnaround area?
Yes, there's a similar turnaround in this area, which is inside the 25-foot buffer.
You said this area. Explain where that is.
This is within the 25-foot buffer, which is created because this, even though it's a commercial use, this piece of the bank is zoned R4. So this buffer should be there against the residential property, but it's a commercial use, so I'm hoping we can have it or turn around in that buffer area.
And you're right up against the parking for the bank.
Yes, we are.
Do you believe the revised plan minimizes the relief that's being requested as compared to what was previously before the board?
Yes, I do.
And is part of that reason changing to all residential use?
Yes, it is.
And then we've also eliminated many of the other measures of relief we've asked for?
Yes, we have.
In your opinion, does the proposed plan have detrimental impacts on the adjoining properties or the public health, safety, and welfare in general?
No, it does not.
That's all I had for Mr. Erickson.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the end of my case. I'd ask that my exhibits go into the record.
The only thing that I would like to interject with advice of counsel is on the A12, number 7, to put this paragraph in at the end. Such restrictions shall be finalized during conditional use and land development proceedings and shall be satisfactory to the township. It's A12, number 7.
Are you asking me or
No,
Mr. Ryan?
I'm kind of,
Well, I would hope that
it's from our suggestion from our solicitor. He feels that you should put that in there.
I don't like the deed restrictions that are hanging out there
Right.
because the board is not, we're not going to do that. That's really more of a land development, conditional use type thing anyway. And I just want it to be clear that this will be resolved, but it's not, the
Right.
board's continuing involvement unless Mr. Rice has.
Do you want to write a copy? You want to write that down, George?
Mr.
I'll
Rice,
have
do you
it
have
in
any
the
issue with that?
transcript.
Okay, you'll have it in a transcript. Pardon me?
I think adding that makes.
Yes, that's the reason, yeah.
There's some conditions that I think have been negotiated with the neighbors. And
You you want to take a thing? I'm not sure anybody hears you, John. You have such a melodious voice, you want to make sure everybody hears it.
I think that makes it clear because I know there's conditions that the neighbors have negotiated with the developer here, which are fine. There may be other conditions that come up during conditional use and land development that the township wants to impose. So ultimately, we need to have the
Right.
final say on what they are.
Yeah, and I guess the other piece of it is, it's not coming back to involvement from us. That will be a job that'll be
right.
taken.
Zoning hearing board's out of the picture on that. I mean, the normal process is they get all their approvals, we do development agreements,
Yeah,
we do the
exactly.
easements, we do the deed restrictions, you know, and it all gets finalized before plans get recorded.
Yeah,
So
and I'm not
that's
trying to put work
consistent.
on your
Right.
shoulder, but it seems to me that this is exactly the kind of task that does belong in conditional use and land development, and is not really a zoning board continuing involvement.
Right.
Also, I think that for the memo from the Planning Commission, that should be entered into the record. I was going to label it Exhibit PC1.
Okay. It's read into the record, so.
Oh, it's read into the record?
Yeah, I read it, so it's in the record. It's kind of.
If we're okay with 812, I'll take that back and put it into my,
I stuck it in place. You want it back?
yeah.
My goodness gracious.
I know.
So I don't know if my exhibits got moved into the record.
Well, I assume you will move this into the record, but assuming that these conditions are accepted and approved, it would contain that additional sentence about, the restriction shall be finalized during conditional use and land development proceedings and shall be satisfactory to the township.
Right, that's what we expect during that process anyway.
Right. Okay. Mr. Crawford?
Do you have any objection to that insertion, Mr. Crawford?
No, we have no objection. And I also am very confident that there won't be any real issue between the township and the neighbors in terms of documenting the restrictions. It would normally be part of the homeowners association declaration under the Uniform Plan Community Act. And so we're very confident that working with Mr. Erickson, we've been able to work through these issues to date on a very cooperative basis between the neighbors and the developer, and I'm sure we will not stumble on that particular issue. I'd like to just reinforce what we said at the last hearing, that this board had requested the neighbors and the developer to try to work through their issues, and that has been done. The conditions of redevelopment that have been put into the record as Exhibit A12 are ones that the community has unanimously endorsed, and also endorsed the plan that accompanies this application, this revised application, as being consistent with the conditions and therefore in compliance with the commitments that Mr. Erickson made to the community. As an aside, I would suggest that raising the building is going to provide for a really better long-term community, even if it were in decent condition, which we feel it's not really economically salvageable or physically salvageable, that the plan that's now on the table provides for a more coherent, albeit small, but this is an infill tract and lends itself well to this type of density, which is consistent with the density modification, and actually well below, as we understand it, the total impervious coverage or building coverage that would be allowed under the ordinance. So I don't want to, I think at this point, any contrary positions vis-a-vis tearing out the building have been at least unofficially resolved, so I won't go into a lot of detail about the community's belief. Just let me summarize that the community has lived with this deteriorating building over the last 7 or 8 years, have found that there have been a lot of false starts in developers or owners coming through initially saying that they would like to salvage the building and then walking away from it. And we feel that the proper decision here for the long-term benefit of the community as a whole is to allow this plan to go forward with the variances that have been requested. As I said, it's an infill tract, and therefore I think lends itself to a reduction in the 5-acre minimum. The open space area that has been discussed is important for at least 3 or 4 reasons. First, it does provide the substantial buffer from the single-family community of Farm Road and Windsor. This is a different housing type. The architecture is attractive, but nevertheless, it's still a different transition from what exists on Farm and Windsor, and therefore the open space buffer is one that has been a very important component for my clients, and they are all in accord. I think probably more so than I've seen in almost any other circumstance where a neighborhood group is trying to mobilize to deal with a proposed development. Secondly, there will be substantial landscaping and preservation of the existing pines that are directly behind the patios on the easternmost row of buildings. And that landscaping is important not just for the neighbors, but also from the perspective of the vantage point of along Lancaster Pike. If the other plan had been built, that would have been wiped out. And you can see, actually, it's not graphically shown to any great detail, but the bank building is in line with the proposed carriage homes. And to the east, where the open space is behind the carriage homes, is also a corridor, a visual corridor that will be preserved with the trees now being very mature, probably 30, 40 years old. So we feel that it's important from that standpoint as well. Thirdly, it provides a substantial area to do quality and excessive stormwater management. And rightfully so, you've asked about how that how that is enforceable. It is a concept at this point. It's so early in the design and the engineering here that it really would be unreasonable to try to pin down the specifics of that. We have every confidence that between the community and the developer that a substantial improvement in the existing conditions of stormwater management can be made. There's now almost an acre of building cover and driveway and parking cover on this property with absolutely no stormwater management. There will be a twofold benefit, a slight reduction, as the applicant mentioned, in the overall impervious coverage. But even more important, this area will allow a substantial enhancement in stormwater controls. I would offer, I guess as our only, at least the only exhibit that I would present, a photograph of storm conditions. I guess we would put it N1 for neighbors 1.
Sure.
And I'll offer a paper copy as well that illustrates how drastic the existing, graphically the existing flooding problems just at the lower end of this community, the Windsor and Farm Road community. A lot of that runoff comes through this property, and overcompensating stormwater management will certainly assist in dealing with that issue. Stormwater in Wayne is, I mean, I don't need to tell you, it's a major issue, and it's certainly a major issue for my clients in this situation. So we feel that these conditions were negotiated in good faith by both the neighbors and the developer, and we would support the grant of the variances subject to the conditions with the modifications that have been read into the record. Yeah. John or Leslie, would you like to add to what I've just said?
Excuse me, Fron, is that stop sign at Lancaster Pike coming out from Farm Road?
That is Lancaster Pike, I believe, in the background. at the corner of Francis Avenue.
That's where the Wawa Triangle is.
This picture was taken and submitted by Mr. Simkowski. This wasn't taken by a neighbor. So this is official township record. My name is John Shane. I think I've done this before. Yeah, we've, S-H-A-I-N. Thank you. We've been together a couple times. The neighbors, which Leslie Morgan has led, first of all, I want to thank you for getting us all together, because based on your suggestion, we get together and work with a builder, and the suggestion of other members of the township. The neighborhood did get together in a way, as Mr. Crawford suggested, that we've never done before. We got together unanimously, collected enough funds for a lawyer, our own engineer, so we had independent advice and counsel. And Mr. Erickson actually initiated contact with us because the township requested he do so privately before we get through this whole process, which I think has now taken 5 months from the time we started. And from a neighborhood perspective, and I'll speak for myself, but I think the neighbors are uniform in this, that this represents the best opportunity we've ever had to integrate this property with the neighborhood, to attack the issue of stormwater management, which Mr. Erickson led with in all of his discussions with us. It isn't something he backed into and defaulted, though I do understand that the requirements of the township engineer will be up to Mr. Erickson to meet those, and even with his commitment to exceed those, and we believe that will happen. We also believe that there have been tours in the building. You've seen all the pictures, so I don't have to share them with you, that maybe the new addition of friendly flying creatures has added another dimension to this. But we don't believe that building is worth saving. And as someone reminded me before the meeting, that even I personally wrote an email and something to the township in 2008, that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, with an open building, with open roof, with leaking, I think we can all understand that with no support at all of maintenance of any kind, that building has deteriorated to a point that is not economically viable to include in a high-scale, high-end neighborhood that we all have here in Wayne. This is not a modest Class 3 office building that someone would put in. So I want to help show the support of the neighborhood fully with this plan and approach as we've gone through this. We know there are a lot of other steps along the way. This isn't by far the last. But you've asked us to come together with the builder, and we've done that unanimously. So I think we've met that standard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Crawford, you have someone else?
Hi, I'm Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. I've been sworn in before, too. Okay. I just wanted to, since there's been some discussion on the flipping back and forth, you did ask us to negotiate with the applicant as well as some of the commissioners. We've done that. And along the road of fighting came a solution. And then along the road of the solution came something that I thought was pretty darn good for the whole township. And that is something that Mr. Crawford touched on, but I wanted to touch on a little deeper. And that's the open space creation. So on that side of Lancaster Avenue, where 115 doesn't come all the way to, it is stopped by Citizens Bank. So it's stopped by the Citizens Bank parcel. This, if you can see, goes all the way to from the Stratford office building to Lancaster. It is the only open view shed on all of Lancaster. There is a $1 million purchase by the township that happened that's called St. David's Park. Nobody's ever there. It is a quarter of the size of this view shed, but the township and the taxpayers paid $1 million for it. And then there's the ongoing maintenance. So strangely, I was a little upset you made us negotiate because my heart was somewhere else, I have to tell you. But I love open space, and I love our way of life back here, and it was extremely important to us to follow the code as well. So when we looked at parts of density modification and how it laid out, we found the pine tree protection, because in the density modification thing, it specifies that actually the tree preservation comes above anything else. It doesn't mention old buildings at all, but it does mention open space dedication. And if you measure our square right here, because you can't count the buffers too, almost to the footage, it's what 15% is of 2.13 acres. And we didn't plan it that way, but it strangely fell into a puzzle that created no cost to the township, the largest and longest view shed of open space. Now, on a summer day like today, you may go by on your way home, and you might say, well, that's not much. But 5.5 to 6.5 months of the year, guess what the only trees you'll see are? Those pine trees, because the rest of the trees lose their leaves. So I thought that was really good. I'm glad you guys made us do it, and I hope you like it.
All done? You done?
Unless you need some questions.
No, I thought maybe you were just getting more pictures, maybe.
I didn't think I...
No, it's great. You did perfect. You did. I'm glad, you know, and I'm glad that we got this ironed out without spending 6 months and a lot of hours for.
$1 million.
And $1 million. $1 million always works. Mr. Rice, do you have anything you'd like to say or add? No. Okay. Mr. Brosman, are you done? Anyone else in the audience have something to say? Yes.
My name is John Fuchs. No.
Okay, so raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And state your name, please.
John Fuchs.
And how do you spell that?
F as in Frank, U-C-H, S as in Sam. I'm a partner in the Stratford office buildings, located at 125 Stratford Avenue. I'm the property that's adjacent to the northern property line of 115 Stratford Avenue. I guess I just wanted to say that I'm surprised at the extent of the density increases that have been requested. The property is zoned R4. It's a gently sloping property that can be used in its entirety as R4. I see no hardship. I think the property would support somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 homes. I appreciate the mention of encouraging conservation and the trees. Along the old Stratford Avenue, the driveway of this proposal requires the removal of quite a number of substantial old-growth oak trees. And perhaps if the density was a little bit less, the driveway could be moved to avoid having to destroy those trees. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask you a couple questions?
Yes.
Mr. Fuchs.
Mr. Fuchs. There's another mic, Mr. Fuchs, if you'd like.
Do you realize, Mr. Fuchs, that we're not asking to increase the density by getting this relief?
You're not asking to increase the density?
Yes, did you realize that?
I saw you show a plan at the Planning Commission meeting that had 11 7,000 square foot pieces dotted throughout the property. But it didn't look to me like it was something that was buildable.
But this variance we're asking doesn't increase the density, does it?
What variance are you asking for?
A minimum, a variance from the minimum tract size to do density modification.
But isn't density modification different than R4?
Yes. Are you aware that density modification allows only 5.5 units to the acre in R4?
I don't get the point.
If you don't know, you can just say you don't know.
I didn't know that.
Okay. That's all I have. Oh. Are you aware that R4 allows 30% building coverage?
Yes.
And this plan, can we look at it, A14? Do you agree with me? It's showing only 16% building coverage?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other? No. Brad, do you have any questions?
I don't know.
I've got a couple of questions. What is the parking provision for the development?
I'm sorry.
There are 11 units. So there are 11 spaces inside the garage, and then there is an additional 6 guest parking spots shown on this plan. But even though there still are 2 additional spots in each driveway. So depending on how the count is done, I guess Radnor does not count those 2. They're still there. There would be 22 spots in the garage plus 6 guest parking spots, which exceed their minimum requirements.
So you may have misspoke. You said first 11 spaces in the garages. It's 2 per unit,
Yeah.
correct?
Can't hear.
That's correct. There's 22
Audience
in the
can't
garage.
hear.
Pardon?
Audience can't hear you, George.
Okay.
I was asking Mr. Erickson if he misspoke initially. When I think he said there were only 11 spaces in the garage.
I'm sorry, there are 11 units, and they're all 2-car, so there's 22 in the garage. So I believe we have plenty of parking.
And if you were developing this as a, instead of townhomes, if you were developing this with single-family homes, how many homes would you be able to build on the lot? If you were to tear down the mansion?
If we built single-family homes, we would probably be in the approximately 10 single-family homes. With just the math for R4, 7,000 square foot lots allows 6.2 units per acre. And with 2.13 acres we have here, that would be 13. But the math, doesn't work out perfectly. So I believe it's in the 10 range. But obviously that would have to go through land development and
And the setback requirement for that would be?
the setback requirement for that would be minimal. It would be 25 feet for structures in the back, but accessory structures is only 3 feet. If we develop it under the R4, and there's no open space. That's why, working with the neighbors, we have settled on a all residential plan with density modification, which allows us to give this open space, and I believe provides the best plan for this property.
Mr. Erickson, you brought 2 plans before this board, starting in April, I guess it was, both of which, the first 2 plans, both included retaining the mansion. One is an office building and the other is a 4-unit condo building. I assume you seriously looked at the mansion before bringing those plans.
I had
All the
investigated.
conditions, maybe the vultures weren't there, but the rest of the problem was there, was it not?
I had done some investigation, but hasn't been until the last couple weeks where I've had structural analysis is done and really quantified exactly what that, what it would be required to make that building viable. And in looking at it in its totality, the building is not viable, but this plan and this development, I believe, is.
Anything else? Okay. Nothing? Okay. I'll do this. I would recommend that we give a variance for one, which is a variance of the code 28092A4 to allow density modification development on the tract of less than 5 acres. I also would give a variance for the code 28042 to allow residential use and related improvements in the commercial commercial office district. Also 3, a variance from code 28091G to allow paving in the vehicle turnaround in areas and a 6-foot-high wall or fence in the required buffer area from the adjoining bank property, a portion of which is in the residential area. Also, to the extent required, variance from code 28029 and code 28093 to allow multiple family townholding buildings on the lot, and a variance from code 28109 to allow a 6-foot-high wall in the front yard setback. Also contiguous would be all the conditions in A12, I believe it is, proposed conditions and approvals for the agreement with the neighbors, with the addition of the sentence in number 7 that we added. I believe that I would recommend the reason why I suggest we do this is the fact that the property and its shape and its location and its dual zoning make it very difficult, if not impossible, to utilize it to its highest and best use, as whether it be individuals, single homes. I think that the open space and the views and the way this specific project is laid out, it would be a definite asset and to the township.
I just would add to that in variance number 1, the variance to allow density modification, they still have to go for the conditional use procedure for that. So we're not purporting to subsume that.
And any other codes or board they have to go in front of, whether it be planning and meet all the zoning all the engineering regulations of the township. Peter?
Well, it may not be appropriate to say so, but I don't like it. But I can't come up with a good reason to say no, so I'm voting to approve it.
And I'll concur with the chairman's remarks. That it is great that the neighborhood got together and settled this with the developer, because this was a very contentious issue. I'm taking, it would have been great to save the maples as well. I heard what you said about that, and it is unfortunate that it can't get saved, but I think the benefit of getting this done and you making this property useful is will help the community tremendously. So I'm voting in favor.
And I would personally thank both the neighbors and the developers in doing this. A lot of times, these things never get resolved, and they get appealed, and they get contentious. And there's, like I said to you, if you guys don't get together, we'll make a decision, and somebody won't be happy. At least now we have 2 people that are happy, and I thank you. No further business. The meeting is adjourned. There will be no August meeting for those that are watching, which is normal for the zoning board in Radnor Township. Thank you. See you all in September.